Our story leads us to the fancy 5-star Jiao Hotel in Yuncheng, where a red-haired woman is taking a warm and cozy shower. Just then, a man with evil plans snatches her clothes and declares that he will finally make her his. But just then, a knock at the door interrupted him as a food delivery had arrived. The man quickly responds that he's heading out to grab the order he just placed. And to everyone's shock, it was our hero, Yi Chen, standing there. The lover flings open the door to find a delivery guy standing there, only to be startled further when the woman steps out from behind him. The young woman, wrapped only in a towel, looks around in a daze and asks if he took her clothes. Stunned by what he saw, Yi Chen let the bag of food slip from his hands and hit the floor. Frustrated by the mess, the wealthy man starts screaming and hurling insults at our hero. When he sees the chaos, his wife yells out Connie, leaving the protagonist totally baffled. The lover laughs at him, revealing that her so-called useless husband was actually a delivery guy, which sends Yi Chen into a flashback of the 3 years he waited for her while she refused to let him touch her. The young man then asks her why, since he believed she was a woman with strong principles. She replies with a cold tone that she cheated on him because her husband is just a useless food delivery guy. Right after, the woman introduces the other man as a young master who runs a huge company. She insists that only a wealthy man like him is worthy of her, never a poor man like her husband. The wealthy man then orders Yi Chen to kneel and admit he was wrong about earning 5 stars. The protagonist's heart swells with anger as they think about how shameless people can be just because they have money. Fang Xiao tells the woman not to worry and to just keep going with what they were doing. With pure rage, our hero lunges forward to grab the man and make him stop, all while his lover screams out in pain. His wife stands between the rich man and the danger, boldly telling her husband to hit her instead. With a threatening tone, the woman warns him that she'll call security if he doesn't leave right now. Feeling let down by it all, our hero just stares at her and whispers her name, Wang Jiao. Then, Yi Chen recalls the day his grandfather showed him a picture of the woman he was supposed to marry. That was the first time he looked at the face of the woman he was going to marry. Back then, he thought she was beautiful and dreamed of a happy, peaceful life with her. But now he knows it was only a dream, and he hopes she won't be sorry. As the young man walks away, the young woman laughs and admits her only regret is that her husband is useless. Outside, the delivery guy hops on his scooter and gets ready to ride away from that terrible spot. Then, a call from a stranger rings out, and he answers it right away. His master told him that his 3 years of training as a Wang family son-in-law had finally come to an end. And with that, his next challenge was to step into the big, fast-paced world of business. The man reveals he bought the Huaxing Group and named him chairman, and Yi Chen agrees. Immediately after, he begged them to take the girl into their family, but the young man refused, saying she wasn't good enough. Then our hero zooms away on his scooter, chasing a fresh dream with a brand new life waiting for him. Later that night, just after 8, Wang Jiao finally gets home and turns the key in the lock. She watches her husband pack his bags and wonders if he's running away because of a small argument. She adds that since he's living in her house for free, he has to put up with everything quietly. Yi Chen erupted in rage, shouting that for 3 long years he had swallowed the insults from her and her whole family. He yells that he tolerated it all because he loved her, but from this moment on, he is done with this life. With a look of pure resolve, the young man stares at Wang Jiao and finally speaks the words that will end their marriage. She snaps at him, calling him useless and threatening to take away his apartment and fancy car. Our hero smirks and says he doesn't need it and can give it all away. Annoyed, she agrees to the split and grumbles about his grandfather for forcing her to wed a worthless man. Then, she bragged about her wealthy family, and he told her they should finish their divorce the next morning. The young woman says no, because her grandmother is turning 80 and she needs to talk to her family first. He told her to get things sorted fast since he'd be waiting for her call. As he walks away, she yells that he'll regret it and come crawling back to her in just a few days. While the rain pours down outside, the young man's phone rings, and someone tells him the car is waiting for him. Suddenly, a fancy car pulls up right in front of him, as if it had been waiting for him all along. In fact, a whole fleet of Rolls-Royces had gathered, and several men in suits bowed to him, calling him young master. One of his men offered him an umbrella, but Yi Chen shook his head and refused to take the cover. The young master believes that letting the rain wash over him will help clear his mind. One of his men gently drapes a heavy coat over his shoulders to keep the cold away. Our hero stares with fresh fire and tells everyone to go. A line of fancy cars rolls down the wet street, making everyone nearby stop and stare in awe. People standing on the sidewalk look puzzled because so many cars of that brand are suddenly everywhere. Upstairs, his ex-wife hears the noise and starts to think someone very important might have arrived. Sitting inside the car, the hero stares straight ahead with a serious look, thinking deeply about what lies ahead. Everyone knows about wealthy families, but the Yi family holds a special kind of mystery with billions in assets. As soon as they reached the heliport, one of the men showed him to a helicopter that was already waiting. From the age of 3, the family's heirs have been raised in a way that is totally different and much harder than for everyone else. To see who they really are, the family elders put each one through unique tests. In a memory from the past, his grandfather told him that the mission was to marry into a second-class family. Back then, the young man eagerly took the challenge because he was already hooked on the girl. But now, with a tear on his cheek, he knows it's all over and he is welcomed back. He was finally back where he belonged, surrounded by the family and home he truly called his own. The next morning at Gao's grandmother's birthday party, everyone gathered to cheer and wish her happy birthday. The head of the Wang family spots that Yi Chen is missing and asks where he has gone. The ex-wife is openly lying, claiming her husband was probably at work when he wasn't. Two relatives laughed at the protagonist for working as a food delivery guy, making him feel ashamed in front of everyone. Furious over the disrespect, the old woman snaps at her granddaughter to bring the young man there right now. Trapped with no way out, the young woman makes the hard choice to tell everyone that she and her husband are getting a divorce. The grandmother yells that her grandfather set up the marriage and demands to know who gave their permission. She cried and figured it was better to blame Yi Chen for having another woman since she couldn't fight her grandfather. The old lady is so shocked she screams at the young man, calling him a monster for cheating on her granddaughter after he promised to change. Her cousin just said it's no surprise that he never let her touch him in 3 years. The matriarch brushes it off, insists he still cheated, and commands that he be brought in to face his punishment. Without a second's delay, the woman grabs her phone to call her ex-husband and do exactly as her grandmother asked. Yi Chen's phone began to ring, and the caller was his ex-wife. The young man picked up with a cold voice and asked what she wanted this time. The woman says her grandmother wants him to go, but he refuses and hangs up the phone. She can't believe her ex-husband just hung up on her, and she's furious that he acts so coldly to her now. The young woman tells the matriarch the boy isn't coming, and the old lady gets so mad at his boldness that she flies into a rage. Right then, cousin Shaji steps up to fetch the hero, and grandma gives her quick nod of approval. She stood quiet, just watching her cousin drive off to find her ex-husband. The grandmother waits for the whole room to focus on her before she shares something very important with the family. She whispers to them that the washing group now has a new, mysterious boss whose face no one knows. The old woman ends by saying the family's future rests on getting along with this man. Meanwhile, one of Yi Chen's men asks him about what he's been doing lately. The hero says it's his final day delivering food, so he'll stay in the shadows to watch his enemies instead. Over in a different place, his ex-wife's cousin calls the young man while driving his fancy car. The relative asks where he is, and the protagonist tells him right away. With a sneer, the cousin grins and tells him he's coming to meet him. Soon after, the man's car almost crashes into Yi Chen as he rides his scooter. The driver tells the delivery guy to get in the car since the grandmother wants to meet him. Our hero stands firm, refusing to back down and warning that the divorce will happen no matter how hard his grandmother begs him to change his mind. Shaji laughs and tells Yi Chen that the matriarch wants to punish him, so Yi Chen asks why. The cousin shouts that he cheated, so the Wang family must punish him. Our hero stares in shock, wondering if his ex-wife really said he cheated on her. With that, the young man breaks into laughter, and the annoyed cousin asks what's so funny. The protagonist stares with icy eyes, wondering how someone like Wang Jiao could be so shameless and dishonest. Shaji freezes at the sudden shift and feels a strange power rolling off the delivery guy. The relative then says, "Get in the car and kneel down so your grandmother can give you your punishment." Frustrated by the refusal, the cousin storms out of the car and warns him that he's going to beat him up. Shaji didn't even think twice before charging at our hero to punch him right in the face. Yi Chen sidesteps smoothly and bounces his scooter's mirror off the attacker's face. The hit lands just right, and the cousin screams in pain as a trickle of blood runs from his mouth. Enraged, Shaji draws his knife and declares he will carry out the family's justice by ending his life. The cousin lunges with a knife, but our hero moves faster and just barely dodges the blow. With a sudden twist, he snatches the enemy's wrist just in time to stop the blade from slashing at him. The protagonist grabs the chance and knocks the cousin right in the face with a hard punch. Lying on the ground, the man hears Yichen tell him he's done being the Wang family's dog. With a fierce look, our hero shouts that no one will ever give him orders again. The defeated cousin threatens him as the delivery guy snaps his helmet on and gets ready to go. While the birthday party for the matriarch continued at the entrance of the Manhwa hotel, as Mrs. Wang and the rest of the family waited with their hearts pounding in their chests, someone finally shouted that Shaji was back. As the car rolls up, Grandma gives her grandson a thumbs up for getting the job done so fast. To everyone's shock, the young man steps out of the car looking badly beaten and cries out for his grandmother in despair. Shocked, the grandmother demands to know who hurt her grandson, and he reveals it was Gao's useless husband. The young man's dad looks so angry he screams that some trashy kid dared to hurt his son. With his face puffed up like a balloon, the relative turns to the grandmother and asks if they should call the authorities. She turns them down, calling it a shameful family business she will handle alone. She then tells her son to use his connections to teach the young man a lesson and bring him back. Half an hour later, Yichen finds himself trapped in a dark hallway by two towering men. The brutes introduce themselves and grab the protagonist, dragging them along without so much as a single question. The young man realizes the Wang family sent him, but he says no because today is his last day of work. Suddenly, the goons turn angry and rush at him to hurt his hands. Not long after, the quiet hallway filled with the sounds of a fight and cries of pain. Soon, our hero looked calm and relieved because his job was safe. But one of the thugs jumps up behind him, his eyes burning with rage and ready to strike. The man tries to sneak up from behind, but the hero slips away just in time. Not a worry in sight, he still makes sure his food delivery is safe. He told them only one delivery was left, hopped on his scooter, and sped away, leaving the goon in the dust. Back at the fancy Manhwa hotel, the Wang family's big party was still going strong. Jiqiang told his mom that all the men he hired had been beaten up by the ex-son-in-law. The matriarch stares in shock, wondering if that useless man actually knows how to fight. Suddenly, a man shouts that the Tuanchuan delivery agent for the region is there to give her his congratulations. Shaji's father sees the young man's boss and quietly whispers a fresh idea to his mother. Boss Ma Kun shows up with a fancy bottle of wine as a present for the birthday girl. Mrs. Wang thanked him, but she saw he was grumpy and asked what was wrong. The cousin's dad leans in close and whispers the truth about Yichen right into his ear. Ma Kun is stunned to discover that her granddaughter's fiancé not only cheated on her but also hurt her grandson, and while she laments his cruelty, Jiqiang insists he is the perfect person for the job. It turns out the young guy is a delivery driver for his company, Tuanchuan Delivery. The boss wears a wicked grin and promises to handle the problem himself, telling them not to worry. He pulls out his phone and asks an employee to make up a fake order for the Manhwa hotel. 15 minutes later, our hero rides his scooter in for one final delivery to close out his day. He gave Mr. Ma a phone call to tell him the package was waiting at the hotel entrance and to come pick it up. At the other end of the line, the boss ignores him and orders the delivery guy to bring the package into the hallway. The young man tells the customer that no one can come in and that they must walk to the door. Ma Kun glanced at the matriarch, who gave a nod of approval for him to move forward with the plan. The man gives our hero a dark look and says, "Wait right here at the hotel entrance for me." As soon as he hung up, Yichen realized he'd walked right into a huge trap. Just then, the boss and the whole Wang family walk together toward the exit to meet him. As soon as Ma Kun arrives, he points and orders the protagonist to strip off his uniform and hand over his badge. Our hero frowns in confusion and asks what's going on. Then the cousin steps up to say, "That man is my biggest boss at the company." Ma Kun warns him that he could ask the boss who hired him to settle the argument if he doesn't believe it. The protagonist's phone buzzed with a call from his manager, who told him that President May had just fired him. The young man was so angry because that guy ruined his chance to end the day on a high note. With no other option, the delivery guy takes off his jacket just as his boss said. The ex-wife's dad and his cousin Ma Kun were mocking him, telling him to take it all off like a little dog. So our hero turns to the boss and asks if his job contract is still good for the whole year. Ma Kun stood frozen, baffled that a simple delivery man could know such secrets. Yichen smirks and tells the man he's no longer working for the delivery company, but the man gets furious and shouts that he's too close to the big boss of Tuanchuan to get fired. Then Grandma Wang jumps in and shouts for the former son-in-law to drop to his knees on the floor. She publicly accuses him of cheating on her granddaughter and hitting her grandson, vowing to punish him right in front of all the guests. The hero grinned and wondered why he had to bow down to that old woman. The matriarch then remembers the promise he made to take whatever punishment the family decides if he does anything wrong. Our hero stands firm, proving his promise is ironclad and he never backs down. Feeling pleased, the cousin's dad tells them to grab the Wong family's dragon ruler so they can get punished. Next, a heavy golden dragon is dragged into the Great Hall. The guests whisper that getting hit with that would hurt for days and could ruin your face. The man didn't pause for a second before telling the men to hit the young guy 20 times with the metal thing. Jiao's father steps forward to personally punish his son-in-law for failing his duty. Just then, a woman's voice cuts through the chaos, demanding that everyone step back and let her handle it. Wang Jiao herself grabs the ruler and declares that since he is her husband, she will be the one to strike him. With an ironic smile, our hero points out that she cheated on him first, then blamed him for it, and now she's trying to beat him up. She looks away while he brags about his rare wife, then she steps up to defend him from anyone else, but her cousin snatches the object back and screams that he's a scoundrel. With that, Shaji dives forward, aiming to smash the young man's face with his golden ruler. Our hero moves faster than anyone, snatching the object from his attacker's hand with a quick, agile twist. Yichen didn't hesitate for a second, he swung the ruler hard, connecting squarely with the cousin's face. Everyone stares in shock as the family's unwanted son-in-law strikes the rightful grandson. Furious, the matriarch screams at him for causing a scene and warns she'll call the authorities to drag him away. The young man turned to the crowd and claimed he was only defending himself after Shaji attacked him first. Then one of the guests reminds him that he promised to take the family's punishment. He agreed, but only if he'd actually done something wrong before accepting the punishment. The grandmother then speaks up again, repeating her claims that the granddaughter cheated on her and that the grandson was assaulted. Yichen then drops a bombshell, revealing that she and Fong Chao were the ones caught cheating at the Jiawa Hotel, and she even has the proof. The guests began whispering about how the famous beauty of Yunsheng wasn't quite as pure as everyone claimed. Desperate, the young woman claims she met a wealthy man to talk about business and money. The young man then asks her if doing business means they need a hotel room and a bathrobe. Just as things were getting wild, a guest suddenly shouts that young Master Fong has arrived. Jiao's lover walks into the hall carrying a gift and asks what's going on. The woman dashes over to him and begs him to promise that their meeting was just for business. The wealthy man wrapped his arms around the woman, pretending she'd just stopped by the hotel to drop off a paper. With that, Fong Chao dares our hero to show any proof, like videos or photos, of the affair. He then figures out that Yi Chen was actually the guy who brought him his food. The man kept talking about how the young guy's awful attitude led to a bad review. To make his case, he asked Ma Kun to look at the delivery records from last night. Then the boss pulls out his phone to show everyone the one-star review that proves his story. The guests start to judge the protagonist for taking revenge on a bad review. Our hero stands calm and asks his ex-wife if she has nothing to say about the real reason. The young woman snaps back that he isn't concentrating on his job and can't handle pressure. The young man started to laugh at his own foolishness, wondering why he still hoped for anything from someone like her. He then looks at the matriarch and dares her to show any proof of his alleged affair. Mrs. Wong stood frozen with no words while her granddaughter looked down. Without any proof, the grandmother turns away from the false claims but vows she will never forgive anyone who hurt her grandson. Our hero stands up for himself, claiming Shaji attacked him with a knife and pointing out that the cameras can prove it. Fuming with anger, the old woman snaps at him for finally standing up to her after 3 years of letting her family take care of him. Yi Chen says he's always been respectful and promises to stay out of trouble if his cousin just lets him be. The young man faces her with a serious look and asks for one thing, to finally be divorced from Jiao. The matriarch laughs through her anger, insisting the marriage was her late husband's wish and she has always kept his promise. As she talks, the party guests start whispering about the family drama. The old woman ends her speech by boasting that her granddaughter is so beautiful she is way out of this young man's league. Furious, the matriarch declares she will no longer obey her husband's wish and casts Yi Chen out of the family. Jiao's dad tells the waiter to bring drinks for everyone so we can celebrate. Then, the guests cheered and hugged the grandma and granddaughter for finally getting rid of that trash. The mother grabs the moment to admit they hadn't held hands or even slept in the same bed for 3 years. She yells to the crowd that her daughter is still pure, leaving the girl mortally embarrassed. With a smirk, our hero just watches everyone else get humiliated. He realizes his ex-wife has become just another item up for auction to whoever offers the most money. Our hero steps up to her and praises her for finally finding a man from her family's own ranks. The young woman tells him that if he drops to his knees and begs, she might be able to talk her grandmother out of sending him away for now. The young man wonders if she truly wants him to kneel after she betrayed him so badly. He claims she isn't worthy and then dumps a glass of red wine over his ex-wife's head. The woman screams in shock that the terrible man has lost his mind and is fighting back against them. The grandmother stands frozen in shock at what her former son-in-law just did, while her granddaughter screams in pure rage. The cousin told her grandmother that a divorce wasn't enough, and the old lady nodded in agreement. The matriarch scolds the young man for stealing her granddaughter's youth and beating her grandson so he won't walk free from the punishment he deserves. And with that, she calls on every honored guest to bring the ex-son-in-law's life to a complete end. The guests chatted about the family's plan but couldn't stop wondering if they should really step in. Fong Chao steps in to back the family, swearing that no hotel in the whole city will dare take the young man in. The wealthy man is sure that by taking the woman, he will also force the hero to crawl and beg for mercy. Not long after, the boss of a big restaurant chain stepped up to try and ruin our hero's life. Even the delivery boss, Ma Kun, joins the boycott and makes sure Yi Chen will never work in deliveries again. The boss of a karaoke place jumps in, and our hero asks if anyone else wants to speak. The man repeats the threat, but the protagonist just laughs and asks if anyone else in the sector is going to speak up. Hearing this, the cousin recalls that the young man is a skilled fighter and quickly asks someone to stand in front of him as a bodyguard. The guests say that since you can't know every rich person in the city, you can't stop the trouble from starting. Suddenly, a laugh breaks the silence and pulls everyone's gaze toward a mysterious woman standing in the hall. As a stunning woman in a red suit sits on the sofa, everyone stares in wonder, and when Shaji's father realizes she is President Kun, he quickly apologizes for not welcoming her sooner. Another guest is so charmed by the young woman that he asks the man to introduce him to that beautiful woman. The man thinks it's beneath Ma Kun not to recognize her, then reveals that she works for the Huaxing Group. Kun Hongyan, the powerful vice president who closes billion-dollar deals in secret, is the one who truly runs the company while the chairman remains a mystery. Our protagonist stares in shock as he realizes the woman he knows is actually the vice president of his own company. Jiao's father starts praising her, claiming she is the only person who knows all the city's wealthy folks. The other guest nods and admits that her beauty has made every rich man in the city desperate to get her attention. She jokes that everyone thinks she's dating all the rich guys, and he quickly apologizes. She then thought that a woman as stunning as her wouldn't be a vice president without pulling some tricks. With that, the man asks her to help them kill the young boy in return for $70 million. The president looks cold and silent as she pulls a cigarette from her purse, causing several wealthy men to scramble with their fancy lighters to light it for her. Suddenly, several wealthy men scramble over to light her cigarette with their fancy lighters. But the woman ignores everyone, flashes a seductive smile, and beckons our hero to her. The young man asks what for and wonders how interesting the vice president, who he has never seen before, really is. The president smirks and asks the protagonist to light her cigarette. The guests stare in shock, puzzled by why she treats that pile of trash like something truly magical. Yi Chen doesn't care about anyone else and coldly tells them he has no lighter on him. The sycophants were furious that he openly rejected the wealthy suitors of Yunqing's goddess. Hearing that, the woman stands up and clicks her heels as she walks toward the young man. She asks for his name, and he acts confused, asking which name she means. The president clearly demands his name, but the young man just laughs because they've already said it was Yi Chen. One man shouts at him to stop being rude, but the woman holds up her hand to tell him to be quiet. She steps up and tells him that since they share the same last name as the new chairman, she is willing to give him a chance. She leans in close to whisper in his ear, praising him and offering him a spot as her personal bodyguard. The women whisper and wonder why she's guarding him and if she really likes the young man. Standing far away, the ex-wife can't figure out what the powerful woman wants with Yi Chen. One of the men seizes the chance to ask the new chairman's full name, noting that he is a Yi as well. The president says the boss is so secretive that even she doesn't know his real name. Suddenly, our hero realizes she has no idea who he is and asks where she thinks the exit is. She promised that if he kneels and asks for forgiveness for each member of the Wang family, she will take him on as a bodyguard and pay him 200,000 a year. The ex-wife tells her grandmother that the president is clearly plotting against them on purpose. The matriarch realizes the woman is a top-tier player, which explains how she reached vice president so quickly. With that realization, the old lady knows she will never offend anyone and can make any man fall for her. To everyone's shock, our hero just says no to the powerful woman's offer. His ex-wife stands stunned and speechless, unable to believe the sheer nerve of the man she once called husband. The president stares in shock at what she just heard and shouts for the ex-father-in-law to say it again. Our hero stares straight ahead and steps up to answer the woman, with no one else even blinking. He presses close to her ear and firmly tells her that he will not accept her shameful offer. One unexpected touch sends the mighty woman running in circles, leaving her flushed with shame and totally bewildered by what just happened. One man shouts at him, but the young boy stands up for himself, claiming he just stepped closer so she could hear him better. Furious, she thinks the son-in-law has a lot of nerve not knowing what's good for him. Then she turns to the matriarch and vows to help her family put an end to Yi Chen's life. As the guests cheer, his ex-wife warns him that he can no longer make it in the city. The young man wonders if the choice comes from her or Huashing Group, and she smiles to say she stands for both. Our hero then reminds her that she's just the vice president and doesn't have the right to speak for the whole company. The guests whispered that he was right and that she shouldn't speak for the mysterious chairman. Fuming, the woman can't help but spill the secret that the new chairman, Yi, is actually her secret lover. Our hero stands frozen, wondering exactly when he turned into that woman's lover. He asks if she feels shame for lying to his face, and she only stands firm in her false words. The guests knew that the chairman was the only one on her level, and together they made the perfect match. Xiaoji's dad throws a party and declares that since they finally admitted their love, the money deal is locked in and safe. The president then asks everyone to keep this secret, since her boyfriend keeps his personal and professional lives separate. Our hero chuckles to himself, watching the woman brag and then quickly invent an excuse to hide her lie. Feeling irritated by the young man's teasing, the powerful woman turns to him and demands to know what he finds so funny. Yi Chen claims the chairman is a legend, yet he thinks she isn't beautiful enough to catch his eye. She stammers out that they are deeply in love and that he rented a whole island just to ask her out. Our hero, tired of all the lies, decides there's no point in wasting time arguing with a liar. So he turns to his ex-wife, asks her to wrap up the divorce, and she says yes. The cousin jumps in to tell the young man to stay and eat, but then chases him out of the city for good. One of the men jokes with his cousin, saying that watching him tug the boy's clothes felt just like walking a dog. Our hero glares with icy anger, convinced that delivery boss Ma Kun deserves to be punished. So, he pulls out his phone to call a man he trusts and asks for the name of the boss at Tianchuan Delivery. So the hero tells him to get in touch with the man and take away Yunqing's powers right away. Everyone in the hall freezes in shock and confusion as they watch the former son-in-law make that call. At the other end of the line, his assistant confirms that the man is worth $50 billion. After agreeing to meet the CEO another day and asking his employee to handle the details, our hero calmly hangs up the phone as the plan gets set in motion. An uncomfortable quiet settles over the hall as everyone stares at the young man holding his phone. The cousin bursts out laughing and asks who he is pretending to be to cancel his license. Ma Kun just scoffs and tells the young man to save his bragging for another day since he's not scaring anyone. Jiao's father calls him disgusting and says his grandfather is just a farmer while he lives in a fantasy. President Kun kept a serious face and said nothing as he watched the whole scene unfold. Just then, Ma Kun's phone rings, and he happily answers to find out it's President Wu calling to renew their contract. But at the other end of the line, the man tells him that his agency qualification has been officially taken away. The delivery boss turns so pale from shock that he can hardly believe the news he just heard. He then glanced at the president and the guests, making sure no one would ever learn the truth. Ma Kun, feeling desperate, acts calm and asks about paying the renewal fee, only to be told there will be no more agents. The president walks right past him, telling him not to worry because they'll grab a drink together when they finally meet. Confused, the man promises their teamwork will be great, but the president just thinks he's crazy. Once he hung up, the boss felt a wave of despair and worried if Butler Fong had actually told the president yet. Then the cousin steps up to ask if the renewal went well, but Ma Kun lies and says it went perfectly. Xiaoji raises a glass to the idea of money, and the man gulps the drink down in one go, tears filling his eyes. Our hero sees his cousin praising a man's bravery for finishing a drink at President Kun's, then asks why he's crying, and the man lies and says the burn hurt his throat. The hero dared him to stop lying and finally tell everyone the truth about his lost power. Furious, the man shouts that even if what he said was true, it certainly wasn't because of him, a worthless piece of trash. With a smug grin, our hero claims he's not looking for new enemies while calmly sipping his tea. Xiaoji's father yells at him while the guests stare, wondering if the young man actually did it. Terrified, they begin to imagine the trouble that will follow if the president finds out everything. Jiao's mother tells everyone that her useless son-in-law is just a country bumpkin who doesn't know any important people. The guest nodded in agreement, saying that if he had any power, he never would have let them treat him like a dog for 3 whole years. The grandmother and the rest of the family all agreed that the whole thing was just nonsense and made no sense at all. So the guards led Ma Kun away while he grumbled because he'd brought a pricey bottle of wine as a gift. Watching the scene play out, our hero finally gets it: the Wang family only cares about money, which explains why his ex-wife left him. The chef shouts that the feast is starting and leads everyone to the dining hall. The ex-wife suggests they eat first and wait until later to get divorced so they won't ruin the grandmother's party. So he decides to wait until she finishes her meal before he finally gets the divorce. A cousin got upset because she felt her clean spoon picked up grime just by touching the one used for the trash. Our hero stared at his soup and suddenly realized it was a papaya recipe meant to make breasts bigger. He then tells her she doesn't need the soup, and the annoyed relative asks what he meant by that. The young man tries to wave off her troubles and offers her some soup, but she's upset that he's not even looking her in the eye. The cousin tells the grandmother that the young man shouldn't eat since he didn't even bring a birthday gift. The matriarch urges them to honor their promise, yet the granddaughter refuses since he didn't bring a gift. The hero believes that without the old woman pushing him into marriage, his mission would have failed a long time ago. Knowing it's his final day there, he calls to have a special gift made for the birthday girl. As his ex-wife listens in, she rolls her eyes and snaps that her family won't take any of his junk mail. She tells him not to make a fool of himself and offers to have someone prepare a proper gift for him instead. The young man ignores her and calls to ask if the gift arrived, leaving the woman furious at his boldness. 10 minutes later, a delivery man in a uniform showed up at the fancy hotel where the party was happening. The security guard blocks his way, but the man insists he's just bringing a gift. The delivery man stops at the door to ask who the birthday person is, since he's there to make a special drop-off. The cousin asks him what's going on, and the man says a guy who owns a fancy Rolls-Royce paid him to deliver the gift. Thinking the gift was meant for his grandma, Xiaoji smiled and asked the man to hand it over. The relative opens the box with a smug look, curious about what's inside. But the moment he sees what's inside, his face changes, and he is stunned by the gift. He pointed to a clear ice jade bracelet and claimed it was worth at least 10 million yuan. One guest stares in shock, wondering who would dare ship something so pricey through a plain delivery guy. While chaos swirls around him, our hero sits quietly at his table, watching the scene from afar with a calm bite in his mouth. The other guests whispered that it was the most expensive gift they'd ever gotten and kept asking who sent it. Even the head of the Wang family is speechless and admits she has no clue who sent it. A cousin remarks that every important family is present and wonders who could possibly be missing. With a confident smile, the young woman wonders if her admirer might have sent her the gift. The guests all agree that she is beautiful and that she attracts many wealthy young men from the city. Her father then bragged about his daughter's beauty and agreed that some rich young man must have sent the gift. President Kun smiled and told the man that his future son-in-law was already proving himself generous with those expensive gifts. Our hero looks at the scene and secretly hopes the person is just a fan rather than the man he knows so well. The young man stands up and asks his ex-wife, Jiao, if she's all done eating. Now that the gift is given and she's done, he says they can finally wrap up the divorce. The woman looks puzzled and asks when he gave the gift, since she didn't see it happen. He then pointed at the jade bracelet and said it was the gift he gave. Jiao's father screams at the former son-in-law, calling him shameless because he couldn't afford the bracelet. The cousin frets that her useless husband is bringing shame to the family, but insists the gift was actually given by someone who admires her. Frustrated with everything, the ex-wife tells him she's done being married to him and they should just get it over with fast. Our hero turns to the grandmother and tells her that for 3 years they were family, so the bracelet is his gift. The matriarch snaps at him to quit his boasting and get out, warning that his behavior is bringing shame to the Wang family. Then the cousin threatens to make him crawl out of the city the moment the divorce is final. The young man speaks in a cool voice, saying that staying or going is up to him and no one will tell him what to do. Not long after, the couple walks out of the hotel just as a fancy car rolls up right in front of them. The young woman's father laughs in her face, claiming she isn't good enough to ride in a BMW and telling her to just take a bicycle instead. He flashes a mean grin, warns that he'll be waiting for them at the registry office, and then speeds away. The protagonist didn't even flinch, he just flagged down a taxi and told the driver where he was going. Soon, he reaches the civil registry office to finally put things right. Holding the divorce papers, the young man finally realized that after 3 years, he was no longer just a son-in-law living in his wife's home. His ex-wife sneered at him, calling him a discarded son-in-law and saying it was an even bigger disgrace. Our hero simply told her to speak her mind, since he was done with her family forever. As he gets into the taxi, the young woman screams insults at him, calling him useless and worthless trash. She then asks her lover, Feng Chao, to tail the car and check if he's truly leaving Yuncheng. The wealthy man nods in agreement and follows the taxi, convinced the young man is making a straight line for the train station. He says that because the ex-husband can't support himself, leaving is his only option. However, the woman pauses to think and tells him that his look shows her this isn't as simple as it seems. As the wealthy man trails behind him, he discovers the road doesn't take him to the train station at all. She asks if that's the way to the airport, but the man shakes his head and says it actually leads to the XX district. With that, the ex-wife begins to wonder if the young man is actually planning to leave Yuncheng as he promised. He gently tells her he's just looking for a place to crash and promises that he won't actually find a room. But to their surprise, the taxi pulls up right in front of the fancy Four Seasons Shitsi Lake Hotel. The wealthy man grew irritated and realized Yi Chen had come there just to apply for the waiter job. She scolds him for ignoring the Wang family's power and not taking their threats seriously. With a cruel grin, the man pulls out his phone to call the manager and make him stop. Over the phone, he warns his friend not to hire Yi Chen, a young man who is out looking for work. But the answer he gets shocks him, and his ex-wife asks what went wrong. He says the manager claimed nobody showed up to apply, so he is confused about why the ex-husband is there. Then the wealthy man suggests that the hero might actually be staying at that very hotel. The young woman can't do it because she took all his money, and just one night their costs add up to at least 8,000. Confused by everything, the man decides to ask the manager straight for help. The manager in the hotel lobby checks and confirms that Yi Chen has checked in and paid for 7 nights. The couple is stunned to discover the total bill for their stay has jumped past 50,000. The lover figures out the total cost and asks the ex-wife if the young man has hidden some secret savings. Right then, the receptionist drops a bombshell. He didn't just book a regular room, he got the presidential suite. They are stunned to learn the suite costs 80,000 a night, and with a mocking grin, the rich man asks if she's sure she used her household money to pay for it. The ex-wife is shocked as the lover doubts if she really wants his money. The wealthy man shouts at the receptionist, who confirms the amount is 560,000. The employee also tells how the young man's huge 10,000 yuan tip left the young woman in total shock. The angry woman yells at the worker, shouting that the tip is for the Wang family, not for her. The lover doesn't listen and presses for the money source, while the ex-wife insists it couldn't have come from any expenses. Then she remembers that while he looked after the grandmother's dog, he also took some antiques from the house. The wealthy man agrees with the idea and asks the woman to call her family to see if anything is missing. Meanwhile, at the Wanhao Hotel, the Wang family matriarch's birthday party was still in full swing. Guests hushed in their chatter, guessing who the mysterious gift-giver might be. President Qin is starting to get worried because it's been a long time since the donor showed up. Even with the terrible traffic, she knows the mysterious guest should have made it to the party by now. With that thought, the woman begins to question whether the gift really came from her ex-son-in-law. Suddenly, Jia's mother's phone rang, and when she answered to see it was her daughter, she picked up. Over the phone, the young woman tells her mom to hurry to grandma's house and check to see if any antiques are gone. The mother's jaw dropped when her daughter accused the ex-husband of stealing their family's precious heirlooms. After catching the conversation, President Qin lights a cigarette and sighs with relief that he is nothing more than a thief. Once her business was done, the woman stood up, said goodbye to the matriarch, and was ready to go. Then Shaji's dad seizes the chance to bring up the money trouble, and she promises him it's all under control. With the mysterious donor never showing up, the other guests begin to pack their bags and head for the door. Then the grandmother asks the mother why her granddaughter didn't notice the theft until the divorce was over. The mother tells us that her granddaughter thinks something was stolen because the ex-husband bought a suit for 600,000. The matriarch of the Wang family screams her former son-in-law's name in fury at his boldness. She then tells some family members to head to her house to look around while the rest stay put and wait for the donor. A few moments later, a fancy car rolls up to the giant, lonely house of the Sixian family. Inside, the cousin says they should go their separate ways to find the stolen things faster. After 20 minutes, the young man searches a room and finds nothing is missing. The uncle adds that he found nothing missing, which proves the ex-son-in-law is innocent. This meant our hero had taken not a single thing from the Wang family. But Shaji lies to his uncle, saying he needs to check once more just to be sure nothing was left behind. With a wicked grin, the cousin gets ready to carry out his evil plan. He grabs a 5 million watch and decides that from this moment on, Ichen is the one who will steal it. The relative then screams at his uncle, telling him that a very expensive watch is missing from the room. Shocked, they finally realized how the young man managed to afford the presidential suite. The uncle calls his mom to say his dad's fancy watch was stolen, and the mother screams on the phone and orders them to bring the young man home so she can punish him. The man then tells Shaji that the grandmother wants him to find the ex-son-in-law and bring him to her. Scared of getting hurt again, the cousin complained that his fight injury still hurt so much. He quickly decides he must run to the hospital, leaving his uncle all by himself as he rushes away. With nowhere else to turn, the uncle calls his niece at the Shitsi Lake Hotel to check if she's still there. Then we are back at the Grand Hotel entrance, right where it all started. The young woman gets a call telling her that her grandmother's 5 million watch has gone missing. With that, her lover asks her questions while she frantically realizes her ex-husband stole from her family. She walks up to the front desk and asks the clerk for the room number where her ex-husband stays. The woman stares with fierce resolve and declares she will haul the young man back for stealing her watch. Her lover sees how excited she is to meet her ex-husband and can't help but wonder why. The wealthy man grabs her arm, urging her not to cause a scene, and insists she simply call the police to handle the mess. Frustrated by his attitude, the woman calls him a coward and declares she'll handle it alone. Next, she runs to the presidential suite's door and screams at the thief to open it. In the shower, our hero shivers, wondering why that woman still haunts him like a ghost. With no other option, he steps into the room with just a towel on and looks right at the woman. When she saw her ex-husband's body, the young woman turned bright red and couldn't speak. She was shocked to see Yi Chen had a six-pack, and when she approached him, he simply asked what she wanted. The woman believes she should have forced him to walk around shirtless at home and blames him for snatching the watch. He acts like he doesn't get it, but his ex-wife screams that grandma's missing watch could only have been taken by him. She points to the room, saying it's the only way he can afford such a fancy suit. The young man marvels at her family's kindness, insists he never took a single penny, and gently asks her to go. The young woman stands stunned because he rarely calls her Miss Wang, and she suddenly feels a cold gap growing between them. Just then, she remembered how he once loved her, calling her wife and goddess. Back in the present, she snaps at him, accusing him of hiding another woman in his room and demanding that she leave because of it. The protagonist shouts that she's crazy, insists they're already divorced, and warns she'll call hotel security. Seething with anger, the young woman pulls out her phone and declares that while she once offered him a second chance, she will now dial the police. She then warns him that stealing 5 million could land him in prison for 15 years. Suddenly, she yells out that if he drops to his knees and asks for forgiveness right now, she might just give him another chance. Our hero wonders why liking someone feels so pathetic, then shuts the door. Slammed in her face, the ex-wife roars at him to open the door right now. Then she yells that she's called the police and he's going to jail pretty soon. While at the mansion, the grandmother is stunned to find out her granddaughter called the police. Her mother insists that the Wang family must sort out their own business without help from outsiders. The matriarch warns that he might just be doomed to rot in prison for ruining their family's name. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived and asked to speak with Miss Wang who had called them. The lover is lying, claiming the ex-son-in-law stole a watch just to buy a suit and take out a woman. The officer then tells the receptionist to call the room and ask the suspect to come down. Not hearing a word from him, she whispers that he must be scared and full of guilt. So the officers decide to go up to her room and see exactly what's going on. As soon as they reach the suite, an officer knocks, and the young man in his robe opens the door. The police chief steps forward to introduce himself, asks about the missing items, and our hero quickly denies having taken anything. The officer then mentions his rough past and how he got nothing from his divorce. With that, the officer asks him where all the money came from to buy such an expensive suit. With a calm smile, the protagonist asks for a moment and steps inside the room to grab something. He calmly picks up a document from the table to show everyone the truth, revealing that he is now the CEO of the Huaxing Group. He then slides his fancy diamond card to the stunned cop. The younger officer leans in to ask the chief quietly if such an expensive card could possibly be a fake. With that, the chief asks if they can find his information in the official database. The young man admits he asked a coworker to stash his data away, but he promises to let it go again for a short while. He grabs a friend's profile and sets it to show for just 10 minutes. A minute later, our hero tells the officers they can start the search, and the younger officer pulls out his phone to check on the washing group to confirm the tale. On the screen, Yi-chen's picture glowed with the title CEO of that huge tech company. Stunned, the police officers began to wonder if a skilled hacker was behind it all. Noticing they don't trust him, the protagonist admits he doesn't want to brag but has no other choice. With that, he pulls up his bank details to show them he's telling the truth. The officers stood frozen, jaws dropped, when they saw the account balance was over 10 billion yuan. Our hero reveals that the cash on one of his cards is already worth more than the entire Wang family. He then asks them if, with all that money, he really needs to steal a simple watch. The police chief then asked why such a wealthy young master would ever choose to marry into the Wang family. The young man whispered that his marriage was arranged and begged them to keep his secret identity safe. The officers looked confused but promised to keep young Master Ye's private secret safe. Once everything is settled, they apologize for the bother and say their goodbyes to our hero. 2 minutes later, the officer stepped into the lobby and told the ex-wife that Yi-chen had left the watch behind. She still can't believe it, screaming that if he didn't steal the money, then where did the hotel cash come from? She dubs him a broke delivery guy, leaving the officers baffled on how someone with no money could have $1 billion in the bank. The chief says that unless we have proof like photos or videos, we can't arrest the young man. The officer yells at her for speaking badly about her ex-husband, but she stands her ground and says she wouldn't have left him if he could have been better. The young officer is stunned, and the woman wonders if her ex-husband finally regrets leaving her. The officer is sure that she'll be the one to regret it for tossing away her billionaire CEO husband. She changed the topic and asked if there were any other women in her ex-husband's room. The police chief said that Mr. Yi was all by himself in his room. She smiles with surety, believing that his pain proves he still loves her. As the police drive away, the lover stares after them, puzzled by how suddenly they became so friendly with the young man. Just then, her phone rings with a call from her cousin asking if the police had taken him, so she tells him the authorities found no evidence and that is why he was not arrested. At the other end of the line, the cousin asks what proof they need to finally set him up. With a wicked grin, the relative shows off the watch, proving there's no proof of the theft. So, he made up a fake receipt to make sure his enemy ends up in jail. The woman hangs up the phone, her mind racing with thoughts of the situation and her cousin Xiaoji's plan. She frets over the chance he might end up in jail while holding on to warm memories of him caring for her, and her silent, confused lover just watches her drift away without knowing what's on her mind. The wealthy man wrapped his arms around her and invited her to spend the night at their fancy hotel. Furious at the proposal, she shoves him away and insults him for failing to handle Yi-chen. She glares with anger, convinced Yi-chen has ruined her night and vowing she will never let him go. Right then, the hotel staff tells the rich man how beautiful the woman is, which makes him turn bright red with embarrassment. Fuming over the remark, the man lunges at the employee and orders him to tell him the moment Yi-chen walks out. At dawn, right at 6 in the morning, our hero wakes up and gets ready to face another day at work. The hotel staff at the reception are shocked to see the young man walking out of his room. He steps into the room in a sharp suit, commanding every eye, while a female employee can't help but fall for him. Right after, the employee pulls out his phone to tell Mr. Cho that Yi-chen has just walked out. One of the rich man's goons tails our hero's taxi and whispers that he's driving downtown. 20 minutes later, the young man reached the massive washing group building to start his workday. He ponders President Kun's words and wonders how she will act when she sees him today. While he stays in his room, the ex-wife's lover wonders what Yi-chen is doing there. He recalls the president's warning and believes the young man is seeking revenge on her for that humiliation. He wears a wicked grin as he spots a chance to move closer to the woman and make her happy. Just then, the president's phone began to ring, and she picked it up with little interest. At the other end of the line, the man introduces himself, and the woman realizes she knows him from the birthday banquet. He then tells her that the Wang family's ex-son-in-law has come to her company to take revenge. She tells him not to worry because the building has security, so he won't be able to get inside. But the wealthy man shows that the young man holds an access card that lets him walk right past security without a single problem. Shocked by the news, the president is confused about how his company's card ended up in her hands. So the man claims he used the stolen watch's money to buy entry. The wealthy man called the president, telling her she's beautiful and that he's worried about her. She thanked him for the reminder and promised to send someone right away to check out the office. The lover steps up to help, but the president cuts the call without thinking twice. She then calls her secretary and tells her to go to the office and check if anyone looks suspicious. About half an hour later, we find ourselves standing right in front of the big washing group building. At the reception, the security guard greets Secretary Joe with a good morning as he arrives for work. The woman named Jo Rongrong was actually the personal secretary to the powerful President Kun. The guards say she is stunning, but admit she can't even come close to the boss's charm. As soon as she steps into the room, the secretary jumps at the sight of a stranger and demands to know how he got in. Our hero looked right back at her, keeping his voice cool and quiet as he asked her who she was and why she was there. Then the young woman steps up and tells everyone her name is Jo Rongrong, the president's own secretary. The young man started to wonder why someone like Kun would hire such a pretty secretary. Then he wonders if the president has a soft spot for women, right before the bewildered secretary cuts in. Without any more delay, our hero steps forward and declares himself Yi Chen, the fresh face at the helm of Washing Group. The secretary stands frozen in shock, unable to speak when she learns the truth about the young man. She desperately apologizes and explains that her boss told her about a suspicious person who was on the premises. The protagonist realizes the Wang family is tailing him and snaps at the employee to get back to work. He immediately mentions that the vice president is stunning and says he can't wait to meet her the moment she gets here. In the restroom, the secretary reaches for the phone to call the president and tell her what's happening at the company. The woman is stunned to find out that Chairman Yi is waiting for her in his office right now. The president didn't wait a second before saying she was already on her way to the office to meet the new boss. With that, the woman floors her red sports car, shooting down the city streets at breakneck speed. 10 minutes later, the woman steps into the building's lobby and hears a voice she knows well. It was her secretary, who welcomed her with a bright smile the moment she walked through the massive building's front door. The boss asks where the chairman is, and the employee replies that he's waiting for her right there in his office. While walking, she spots many women arriving early and can't help but wonder why. The secretary tells us that the new CEO looks so good that everyone rushed over just to get a glimpse of him. With a curious and mocking smirk, the powerful woman asks just how handsome he really is. The young woman lets out a sigh and claims he looks better than any celebrity and is likely about 23. Kun Hongying is shocked that she became a vice president at just 32, an age that already feels incredibly rare. She then yells at the young women to pull themselves together and act like pros so she doesn't look bad. The secretary insists that a CEO like him is the only perfect match for President Kun. She kept talking, saying he flattered her and maybe showed up early just to see her sooner. She smiles and bragged that she'd never been unable to make any man do her bidding. The other women nod in agreement, saying the president can handle anything that comes his way. In a flashback, a rich and powerful man is seen washing her shoes like a little dog. The boss smirks and fixes her red lipstick while everyone watches her with admiration, eager to learn her secrets. She then says she'll leave the door wide open so everyone can watch how she tames the young man. Excited, the women ask her to make him kneel and put on her shoes just like always. She believes that by making the chairman feel small, she'll prove to everyone that she's the one in charge of the company. Feeling more powerful, the woman invites him inside to show off her new status. She introduces herself and thinks that even from behind, he looks as handsome as a Korean star. As she looks at him, she feels like she's seen him before, and wonders why the new boss seemed so eager to see her. The protagonist placed the paper on the table and slowly turned around to finally look her in the eyes. The women at the door whisper and wager that the young man will drop to his knees and call her queen. But to her surprise, the man turns out to be Yi Chen, and she is completely stunned to see him standing right there. With shock freezing her and her legs giving out, the vice president drops to her knees on the office floor. The girls at the door can't believe their eyes as the mighty president drops to his knees before their new leader. The office door stood wide open, letting everyone walking past see the crazy scene inside. The secretary was so shocked she realized the man kneeling before her wasn't the chairman, but her own boss. Our hero looks down on the woman kneeling before him with a cold, superior glare. Suddenly, the women screamed and ran away when they realized they had been caught spying on everything. And so she just stayed on the floor, frozen and unsure of what to do. He asks why she is kneeling, and the young woman says the Wang family offended her boss. With her head bowed low, the woman apologizes and begs for forgiveness for everything she said at the party the day before. The young man steps forward, gently lifts her face with a soft touch, and looks into her eyes. He reminds her that yesterday she told everyone they were lovers and asks if she remembers. Our hero sweeps her onto his lap and asks about the island he rented so he can finally ask her out. She felt completely embarrassed, didn't know what to say, and just apologized again. She sees how she looks, smiles, and gently asks her to move from his lap. The protagonist asked the woman to pull the blinds because he didn't want the staff to see the scene. He tells her that yesterday she wanted to cut off his choices, but now he is the chairman and her boss. With a tricky grin, the new CEO asks how she plans to stop him now. The vice president finally admits her mistake and says she never could have guessed he would become the Wang family's live-in son-in-law. She even offers to be let go right now and promises to vanish so she won't bother him anymore. Our hero realizes she isn't an ordinary woman because she never panics and always owns up to her actions. Suddenly, the young man surprises her by revealing he isn't going to fire her after all. He says that even though she made him feel ashamed, she was the only one at the party who gave him a way to escape. With tears in her eyes, the grateful woman promises to give her all to serving him. The young man tells her he can forgive her, but he warns that anyone else who tries to bring him down will not be spared. He then calls her by her first name and asks her to sort out all the details about his enemies. Quickly, the worker agrees and senses that the business world of Yuncheng is about to shake up. 30 minutes later, the woman walks back into the office and hands her boss all the details he needed. Our hero reads the file and recalls how his ex-wife once bragged about her lover's massive $10 billion family. The vice president reveals that while they once held 10 billion, their assets have now shrunk to just 3. She talks about the Wang family's project and vows to cancel everything so they can't dream, but the protagonist says business is business and asks her to bring him the proposal anyway. The woman says she'll get the file right away, but the young man surprises her by offering to go with her instead. While inside, the wealthy man stands outside the building, worried that the president might already have taken Yichen. Right then, a female worker walks over, spots him as young Master Fong, but he has no idea who she is. She mentions a night they spent at a bar to see if he recognizes her. The wealthy man thought he must have been too drunk to bring a woman like her home, until he suddenly realized the truth. Noticing the young woman might be helpful, he hugs her, and she urges him to take her upstairs because Kun is in trouble. A minute later, the lover and the employee step out of the elevator and walk onto the executive floor. Just then, the man catches 2 women whispering about the president kneeling down to the new boss. He then walks up to the president's secretary and asks where her boss is right now. The man didn't even look up at the young woman's question, just walked right past her and headed for the boss's office. Without even thinking twice, the ex-wife's lover kicks the office door open with a mighty shove. He walks in to find our hero and the vice president together, then shouts that he is a shameless thieving son-in-law. The president then asks who let the rich man in and accuses the young man of being there for revenge. He smiles at the woman, reassuring her that he'll personally toss out the trash so she has nothing to fear. To the man's shock, President Chun suddenly slaps the intruder hard across the face. Enraged, she screams at the man and demands to know what in the world he thinks he is to call her that. The wealthy man couldn't figure out why she was so upset and why nobody seemed shocked to see the young man there. He finally realizes the young man isn't coming back for revenge, but to protect her. The lover recalls the rumors and realizes Yichen must have knelt to beg for the job. He laughed and said the young man had woken up early to get ready and crawl over to be her little dog. The wealthy man tells her she must refuse and reminds her of her vow to close his last option. The secretary catches their talk and can't believe her boss just threatened the chairman. Frustrated, the woman slaps the man's face one more time and shouts that she never said that. With that, the boss orders his secretary to throw the man out and fire the employee who let him in. After security kicks the wealthy man out, he fumes that he was humiliated right in front of his ex-son-in-law. He then threatens our hero, promising to throw him in jail and leave him to survive on the streets forever. Enraged, the ex-wife's lover storms toward his car to escape the scene as fast as he can. Inside the car, the man growls at the president, claiming she only made it to the top because of her looks. He vows that one day he will finally get his revenge and make her kneel and beg for his forgiveness. With a grin, the man decides he has to break the news of the young man's new job to the Wang family. An hour later at the Shirshan mansion, someone cried out in shock at what the young master had just said. The wealthy man then tells the matriarchs that the former son-in-law has become President Chun's personal bodyguard. The ex-wife and her family were stunned by the news and couldn't believe it could be true. The lover also claims that staff told him Yichen knelt and begged for the job. He realized the woman had been eyeing the young man since the party, which is why she felt so sorry for him. Raging at the story, the ex-wife screams that he got down on one knee for another woman, not for her. She remembers that over their 3 years of marriage, he never once knelt down for her. Then a cousin just laughs and says the girl isn't charming enough to make a man drop to his knees. The relative kept talking, bragging that if she were married to him, he'd have to wash her feet every single day. Her ex-wife claims she was too good for him, and if given another chance, she'd make him kneel to her every single time. She shouted at her grandmother that the president broke his promise and they had to get revenge. But then, a sharp slap hits the girl's face, leaving her stunned by her grandmother's sudden move. The matriarch then shouts at her granddaughter, reminding her that the deal worth 70 million is right in her hands. Jiao's dad tells her she's jealous of President Chun since the other woman is better at her job. With that, the young woman shouts that since her family won't help, she'll go to the washing group herself to fix things. Seeing the chaos, the matriarchs tell her son to call Qin Hongyan and make it right. Over the phone, the old lady says that if she'd realized the woman was watching Yi Chen, she would have given him up much earlier. She then calls her a liar for breaking her promise and insists she explain what she did. At the other end, the president apologizes, worried that if the old lady knew the truth, she'd have a heart attack. The matriarchs then give the young man to them as a gift, since he has become their own live-in son-in-law. Without even glancing at the ex-son-in-law, the old lady asked all about the 70 million financing deal. The woman says the chairman thinks the project is interesting but needs to learn more before moving forward. With a smile, the grandmother tells him her son will meet him in person, and the president agrees to pick a time. Then the old woman warns her son to make a good impression on the chairman and not to mess things up. He wondered if they'd let the theft slide now that the young man is President Chun's man. The matriarch tells him to keep searching, warning that the proof will either be used to punish him or to help him bargain with the woman. Just then, cousin Shaji rushes in to tell his grandmother that he discovered the young man sold the watch to a gangster. The old lady smiles and tells Yi Chen he's just the president's dog, so she's not going to do anything. She then turns to the rest of the family, complaining that the elders are useless and the young ones are incompetent. The grandmother, seething with anger, screams at her granddaughter for losing her husband and letting her pretty face go to waste. With tears in her eyes and feeling humiliated, the young woman runs away just as her mother calls out, asking where she is going. From the comfort of her fancy car, she vows to teach her ex-husband a lesson for making her look bad. A short while later, the woman walks into the shadowy underground garage of the washing group building. From inside the car, the ex-wife jumps when she spots a woman with purple hair walking toward them. To her shock, she spots Yi Chen and Qin Hongyan walking side by side through the parking lot. The woman fumes that the scoundrel looks too good in his new suit after their divorce and even laughs with someone else, so she storms out of the car and yells that he's shameless for acting like the president's dog. The company boss notices her and can't help but wonder why the proud Wang family princess is even there. His ex-wife claims he knelt for another woman and demands to know why he never did the same for her. She says she gave him plenty of chances, telling him that if he had only asked nicely, he'd still be her husband and a part of the family. Feeling annoyed, the young man asks her if she still has the guts to wonder why he wouldn't get down on one knee. He then reminded her that she had cheated on him with Fong Chao in a hotel and still wanted him to ask for forgiveness. She told him that at the party, she'd given him another chance to stay if he had knelt down. She keeps shouting that kneeling means the same thing and demands to know why he gave it to someone else instead of her. The protagonist explains that kneeling for your wife isn't shameful, but kneeling for someone who cheated with you is. The young girl scolds him for losing control, wishing she'd asked him to wash her feet from the very start. Suddenly, a hand comes out of nowhere and smacks the angry woman hard across the face. It was the president who first shouted at her for cheating and still found her lacking even a shred of shame. Stunned by the attack, the ex-wife demands to know how the other woman dares to hit her, while the woman just stares back at her. With tears streaming down her face, the young woman shouts that the president not only stole her man but also beat her. Noticing the chaos, our hero steps up to the boss and asks her to just let it go. The young man turns to his ex-wife with a cold look and tells her that he is no longer hers. Then the young woman yells that she wouldn't even give away a dog raised for 3 years and orders him to get out. His former wife offers him $500,000, mistakenly believing the president only spends $200,000 a year. The president chuckles at the offer and tells her that even if she added another zero, it still wouldn't be enough. The young woman stares in shock at the $5 million salary, but the couple just turns around and walks away without a second glance. She then grabs him and threatens him by saying her cousin found proof that the stolen watch was sold. With that, the woman offers him a spot as her personal bodyguard and promises to get him out of prison. Our hero gently thanked her for the kind offer but said no to protecting her. He admits he can't guard her while she enjoys herself with other men at the hotels. Inside the car, the young man says that if her cousin has real proof, he'll go ahead and sue him. She sprints after his speeding car, screaming for him to stop and not go. Furious, she calls him a scoundrel for loving another woman and wonders what's wrong with her. The story moves us to 7th Street in Yujing, a famous slum where the poor and the powerful live side by side. Down in the underworld, there's a guy called Brother Melon who's in charge of all the city's chaos. Right then, the ex-wife's cousin shows up and shouts out for the famous but feared Brother Melon. The tattooed guy with a ponytail says hello to young Master Wang when he shows up out of nowhere. The relative claims he's there to strike a deal with the gangster while clutching a mysterious black box. He tears open the box to find a $5 million watch inside, which he plans to sell for $4.5 million. The young man asked the man to say that Yi-chun sold him the watch. The gangster grinned, finally recognizing the man who had struck the young master down before. The cousin nods in agreement, declaring he won't let this shame stand and demands the young man be sent to jail. The man said no to the offer because his boss warned him not to mix himself into family business. The cousin yells that Yi-chun is already divorced and asks why anyone should listen to Boss Lu. Suddenly, one of the tough guys gets mad and shouts that the man is actually Brother Melon's boss. The gangster told us that this boss is his guiding star and that every word he speaks is a law he must follow. With nowhere else to turn, the relative throws the watch at $4 million just to make the deal happen, no matter the cost. But the man insists the boss treats him like a son, which is why he always has to listen to him. The cousin then drops his offer to $3 million, claiming he can still walk away with a $2 million profit. Suddenly, the gangster recalls his boss's rule to never turn down a payout and eagerly takes the job. While we're in the car, our hero drives right beside the company's boss. He then tells the woman that unless he gives the okay, she's not allowed to touch Wang Jiao anymore. The young man says that hating her is just another way of showing how much he loves her. The boss is genuinely impressed by how smart the young master thinks and how far ahead he sees things. He is a wealthy and free-spirited man who treats women with kindness and gives freely. So the woman decides that since his ex-wife doesn't care for him, she's going to take him for herself. Next, they travel to Jinji Temple, where the Wang family is getting ready to build a fancy new home. The president talks about the place, pointing out its beautiful gardens, a forest of maple trees, and a natural hot spring. She then asks him if he truly means to hand over the money to the family after everything they've done. Our hero catches her off guard by showing that this project was actually his own idea to begin with. He explains that when the ex-wife's grandfather died, the ordinary relatives started fighting over his money. The young man built this project to gain control over the powerful families and grow his own influence among them. He told the idea to his ex-wife, who passed it to her grandmother, and then the grandmother handed the project to her uncle. The president tells us that since the Wang family only wants sons, the ex-wife can't take over the business. Our hero agrees, admitting she's always felt pushed around and that the arranged marriage only made things much worse. With that, the young man says that no matter what, her betrayal was wrong. Right then, an autumn leaf drops into her hair and he softly pulls it out. Holding a leaf, the young master asks his vice president to join him for a drink. In another part of the city, someone at a bar was screaming that they desperately needed a drink. It was the ex-wife, out at a bar with a friend, who kept asking her to have a drink. Song Hongyi asks why she's drinking during the day and who made her so angry. The young woman then complains that the disgusting Qin Hongyan slapped her just for insulting her ex-husband. The woman cries from anger, wondering what those two will truly end up as. Her friend explained that the ex-husband is now acting like the president's little puppy, which is why she chose to defend him. Her ex-wife stands up for herself, claiming she only cheated one time and that these days, any beautiful woman does it. Hearing her friend, the young woman spat out her drink and shouted that she had actually cheated on him twice. The woman gets annoyed and tells her husband to just keep quiet since he never caught her doing it. She then complains that he refused to kneel for her, but did it for the president, and she's willing to pay for the same favor. She told him that after loving him for 3 years, it made no sense for him to fall for someone else so quickly. The ex-wife stares at her friend's confusing story, completely lost by the strange theory she just explained. She tells him he must earn her heart so he can ask her to marry him again someday. When she heard those words, the woman was shocked, her eyes sparkling as she finally understood everything. She wears a satisfied smile and whispers that her silly ex-husband still loves her. The friend suggests she marry the rich man, but she complains that he doesn't care for her like Ichan does. With a wobbly gaze, she claims her ex-husband made her sad, so she thinks he deserves a little trouble. The friend then asked why the young man, who's alive and married, started making deliveries 6 months ago. Sleepy, the young woman says, explains that 6 months ago the family went on a trip, and she needed money because she got sick. Suddenly, the woman's phone rings, and her friend tells her it's her cousin Xiaoji calling. From the phone, the cousin yells for her to come to grandma's house because he found proof that the watch was sold. Just then, Yi Chen's phone rings with a call from Wang Xiaoji. The relative tells our hero to head to the grandmother's house right away because he finally found proof of the crime. The protagonist says no because he's busy, but his cousin pushes him by claiming the witness has already shown up. The young master believes he never sold the watch and is ready to clear the matter up once and for all. He hangs up and dials his secretary, Joe, to ask if the employee knows how to drive. Once confirmed, he asks the secretary to pick him up and drive him to the famous Shirshan mansion. As she speeds the fancy car down the busy streets of Yanjing City, the secretary races toward her destination. Sitting in the car, our hero struggles with his messy mix of emotions about heading back to the Shirshan mansion. About half an hour later, they finally reach the grand and fancy gate of the Wang family, where the secretary steps out of the car in her elegant clothes to open the door for her boss. The grandmother and another relative look shocked to see the young woman and wonder where the family's former son-in-law has gone. With that, the employee swings the door open and tells President Yi they have finally arrived. He stepped out of the car and told the secretary to stay outside while he took a moment. His ex-wife and the family elders are stunned to find out that his secretary has turned into his personal chauffeur. Then the cousin starts laughing, saying the guy is just putting on a show to impress the family. The cousin's mom nods along with her son and laughs at how silly the ex-son-in-law's whole performance looks. He then asks him exactly how much money he gave the secretary to pretend to be his private driver right in front of them. As another cousin calls him President Xiong's lapdog, the young man thinks about how nasty and mean his relatives are. Suddenly, his ex-wife Wang Jiao shows up with a smug grin on her face, watching everything unfold. She then convinces herself her friend was right and that he's doing all this just to impress her. Our hero doesn't care and tells his cousin to stop stalling and bring out the witness. With that, the protagonist followed his relative into the mansion and walked down a long red hallway. Standing right at the doorway, 2 guys holding baseball bats waited with scary faces. The young man is puzzled by the thug's presence until one of them greets him as Brother Yi Chen. Our hero doesn't know the man, who says he sold him a watch for 5 million yuan. The cousin mocks him, daring him to admit he sold the watch to the thug. Our hero grins and claims the witness matches the cousin's taste, but Xiaoji shouts out that he's the one who grabbed it. The matriarch then scolds him for stealing from her family and the audacity to argue with them about it. Calmly, the young man turns to the old woman and tells her he came just to prove he didn't take the watch. Grandma then reveals the object, declaring it a rare, exclusive edition that proves it couldn't possibly be a mistake. The thug then claims he sold the item to pay for his fancy presidential suite at the luxury hotel. With that, he asks the cousin about the hotel money, and the cousin decides the former son-in-law has no defense left, so our hero admits he just wanted to act like a normal person but was only mocked instead. So the young man decides to lay his cards on the table and reveal to everyone that he is the boss of the Huaxing group. With a serious look, he asks if being a billionaire isn't enough reason for them. As soon as we said that, everyone in the hall turned and started laughing right in our faces. The cousin laughs it off, comparing him to a movie star who brags about being the richest man in the city. She told him that if he truly becomes the boss of that huge family, she would marry him as his second wife. The thug grabs him, orders him to stop acting, and demands he drop to his knees so the grandmother and cousin can make their apologies. His ex-wife insists that since they were married for 3 years, the family won't send him away. She says he can pay it back later, but he must kneel down and own up to what he did. Our hero retorts that he did nothing wrong, and even if he had, the Wang family isn't worthy of him. Furious, the cousin's mother screams for the authorities to lock the ex-son-in-law away for 10 years. The thug starts to worry that if the cops get involved, their secret plan will get exposed. So he screams that the guy will be forced to kneel no matter what, orders his men to hold him, and then the two grab his arms and tell our hero to drop to his knees right now. Our hero gives a cold glare and insists that he is not worthy of making him kneel. Then, he quickly escapes and hits a henchman hard with an elbow, making the man cry out in pain. Next, the young man lands a solid punch right in the face of the other man who was holding him. The tough guy boss is shocked by the fighter's power and yells for his crew to chase him down, but then a tiny white dog suddenly barks right there, scaring every single one of them. Hua, the grandmother's dog, jumped in front of Yi-Chen to block the thugs and keep him safe. Our hero scoops up the little dog and claims he's watched over it for years, leaving the animal worried about him. With that thought, he realizes even a dog knows who treats it well, while certain people there might not. Noticing the dog has taken its ex-son-in-law aside, the matriarch commands a relative to fetch the animal back. With that, the young woman grabs the little pet who won't stop barking while the protagonist watches the whole situation unfold. Then the family watches him in silence, and his ex-mother-in-law tells him she'll give him one final chance to kneel and admit he was wrong. Our hero shakes his head, saying he isn't strong enough while standing surrounded by the hired thugs. Suddenly, the men turn angry and charge at him, but he quickly lands a punch on one of them. As he fights, he recalls that 4 years before his wedding, his family had sent him to Syria for a year. With all his battle experience, he kicks another thug to prove they're just amateurs compared to him. For a man who has fought in real wars for years, this feels like nothing more than a game for kids. Before anyone could react, every thug was on the ground screaming in pain, while the young man stood tall and untouched. As he sees what's happening, his cousin snaps, jumps on him from behind, and pulls him back to keep him under control. The relative then threatens him, promising to make sure his hands can never fight again. Right then, the thug's boss stood up and warned that since he'd hurt his own men, he was going to settle the score with the young man for good. Yi-Chen twists away from his cousin with a sharp elbow hit and readies himself for the next move. His eyes burn red as he channels his strength to shock the men holding him. The family members tremble in fear, wondering how anyone could possess such terrifying fighting skills. The grandmother wonders if her late husband knew about his special powers and rushed into the marriage just because of them. His ex-wife thinks it's probably just a wild guess since they have no enemies and need no guard. The cousin's dad tells his brother he found a real gem and is happy he turned him down before. To everyone's shock, he reveals that the grandfather actually wanted to marry Yi-Chen to his daughter, not his niece. He remembers turning him down back then because he judged the young man as a country bumpkin and felt his daughter was still too young. The cousin laughs at the ex-wife, saying she ended up with the man her sister wouldn't have wanted. Her sister keeps mocking her, saying she was lucky to escape and that the other person can now enjoy the good fortune. The protagonist was totally shocked because he had no idea that this backstory was real. He recalls that 3 years ago, right after coming back from war, all he ever wanted was love and a family. Long ago, he was instantly smitten by her and dreamed of spending every day the rest of his life with this sweet girl. Now that he's back in the present, he only wishes they hadn't ended it so messily. Without hesitation, the young man leaps forward and seizes the hand of the thug who threatened him. Using all his might, he crushes the man's hand so hard that it makes him scream in agony. With a furious look, the young man demands to know who set him up and framed him. The thug is drenched in sweat, yet he forces a tough act and warns him that he'll regret it if he doesn't back off. The cousin goes crazy because if Yi-Chen forces a confession, he'll be totally ruined. He then says he never stole anything and tells them to call the authorities if they really have proof. With that, the young man snatches his coat and turns to finally escape that terrible place. As Huahua's owner walks away, the little dog dashes after him, refusing to be left behind. He lifts the animal, declares it the only thing worth stealing, and while his cousin's father watches and wonders if they'll just let him go, the older man promises to handle it later. The relative steps up to the thugs to calm them down, but the leader grabs him and demands another $1 million for his injured men's medical bills. The cousin agrees to anything, saying money isn't an issue as long as he gets to teach Yi-Chen a lesson. The thug storms away, swearing he'll get revenge for the shame and the hurt hands he took. At Washing Group, our hero declares he will team up with the Wang family's real estate agency and demands to see their plans. With that settled, his vice president nods in agreement and promises to tell them right away. Then we head to the fancy Wang family home, where they get the big news. The ex-wife's uncle tells the matriarchs that the president gave the money but wants them to show the project to him. So, the grandmother tells her son to make a great first impression on President Yi, because they need to work together for a long time. At that moment, the ex-wife's cousin walks up to her father and asks in a sweet voice if she can go with him. The young woman thinks the president is young and handsome, but her cousin warns her that he's already taken and in a relationship with President Xiong. She answers that they aren't married, and since she's younger and prettier, she can win him over. Her brother nods in agreement, while their grandmother reminds her that great men are hard to find and she must fight hard to win his hand. The matriarch gives her granddaughter the green light to meet President Yi, and the young woman can't help but cheer inside. Seeing this, the ex-wife gets annoyed that she came up with the idea first and decides she will go to the meeting too. The cousin taunts her by claiming the president would never pick a divorced woman. She keeps teasing and promises her grandmother that she will claim the president for herself, no matter what it takes. Feeling deeply wronged, the ex-wife bitterly recalls how her grandmother always treats her unfairly and favors her cousin instead. An hour later, the secretary at the washing group tells her boss that Mr. Wang and his daughter have arrived. The protagonist then asks the young woman to guide them to the reception room and let them wait there. With a cheeky grin, he also warns the worker to never serve either of them a single drop of tea. While waiting in the room, the cousin complains to her father about the tight dress he made her wear. The man says the real aim is to wed the president, not just to be in a quick, short-lived fling. The daughter thanks her father and promises to steal the president from Ms. Chin so they can get married. After more than 10 minutes, they still hadn't been handed a cup of tea and began to complain about the poor treatment. The young woman calls the secretary to order 2 cups of black tea, and the secretary promises to bring them in just a moment. 10 more minutes tick by, and the cousin is already furious that the tea still hasn't shown up. Her dad soothes her by telling her that once she's the president's wife, she'll have the power to fire the secretary. With that, the young woman settles into a graceful pose and waits patiently for the president. Half an hour later, she's so tired of holding that pose that she complains the proper ladylike posture is really hurting her. Her dad also grumbles that the president isn't taking them seriously, making them wait a whole hour. Right then, our hero finally pushed open the door to the reception room to meet them. He spots the young lady lounging on the sofa and yells at her for being so rude in public. She jolts to her feet, startled to see it was Yi Chen, and he smiles as he praises the dress she's wearing. She tells him she isn't wearing the dress for him because he isn't even worthy of her cousin. Suddenly, her father shouts, "What is a bodyguard doing here, and where is the president?" The young man wonders why they still don't get it, but then he says that if they want to talk about the project, they should talk to him. The man calls the useless bodyguard a fighter who knows nothing about business. Frustrated with the mess, our hero declares that if they refuse to talk, he'll just walk away. Seeing this, his cousin calls him back to ask one last question before he leaves. She asks if he knows everything about the lives of President Yi and President Chin, and he says yes. Then the young girl steps forward to ask how close they really are and if they sleep together in the same bed. He sees she loves to talk and jumps at the chance to whisper that they are finally broken up. The cousin and her father stand frozen in shock after our hero just revealed the breakup. With that, they cheer the good news while the young man wonders why they are so happy about it. Then she sat back down, looking down on everyone with a sneer. She calls him by 3 different names at once, and the young man thinks it's very strange. Her father joked that his new boss will be the president, since his daughter is getting married to him. He gives a sly smile and says that this way, the ex-son-in-law will be connected to the family once again. She wonders if the president will really fall for her, and the young woman gives a confident yes. The young woman keeps insisting that the president probably sent that fancy bracelet as a surprise for their anniversary. Our hero chuckles at her own arrogance and, just for fun, admits that the gift really did come from the president. The young woman jumps for joy at the news and laughs that her gut was right all along. She tells her dad that the president loves her, and he is absolutely thrilled to hear it. Her father cheers that his future son-in-law will become president, so she tells her grandmother the exciting news. The protagonist stared at the scene with pure disgust, thinking that family cared only for looks and was utterly unpleasant. The young girl asks where the president is, and the young man answers that he is meeting with guests right now. She grumbles about the slow wait while he talks about a father and daughter who are flirting with the boss. Furious, the young woman calls the other one shameless and demands to know where they are so she can rush over there. Her dad rushes to calm her down, warning her not to act on a sudden urge and mess up her first meeting with the president. So the young guy asks them to wait until the boss is free before telling them anything, then he turns around and walks away. 5 minutes later, the secretary showed up and told them President Yi had to rush off to handle some urgent business. When the news came, the father and daughter stood frozen, too shocked to make sense of what just happened. The man asks if he can come back in the afternoon, but the woman isn't sure and tells them to go. Disappointed, they walk away from the building, and the father calls the matriarch to let her know the gift is confirmed. So we drift back to the grand family mansion where all of them were gathered. The ex-wife asks what's happening, and the cousin replies that there's wonderful news for everyone. She flaunted her smug confidence by revealing that President Yi was the one who sent the $10 million bracelet. The ex-wife is stunned, realizing she was wrong all along and that it couldn't have been Yi Chen. A relative then asks how this could be good news, since the two presidents are lovers. Then the uncle drops a bombshell: the two presidents had long since split up, and that gift was actually sent in two separate pieces. With this, the cousin brags that the president must have sent the gift to the grandmother just for her. The matriarch nods in agreement, saying she always knew the admiral was actually the president of Washing. She promises her grandmother that she will befriend the president and bring great honor to their family. The ex-wife asks where the news came from, and the cousin admits it was her former husband who told her. So the ex-wife promised she'd head to the company that afternoon to handle the contract herself. The cousin stops her and, with a mocking grin, asks her to drive that afternoon. Furious, the ex-wife shouts that she's way too busy to be anyone's ride. Furious from the shame, she throws the door open and runs out, leaving everyone inside. She grips the wheel and speeds down the road, her heart pounding with pure rage at everything that just happened. The young woman couldn't say a word, so she just slammed the gas pedal and let all her anger pour out through her wild driving. By doing that, she loses control of the car and crashes hard into a tree by the side of the road. She cried behind the steering wheel, blaming Yi Chen for making her go through such humiliation. Returning to the Washing group, we see the towering building where our hero now leads as president. Sitting at his desk, his phone rings, and to his surprise, it's his ex-wife on the line. He picks up the phone, and the young woman on the other end screams that she hates him. With a heavy sigh, the young man asks what's wrong, only to hear the woman scream that he ruined everything by telling the truth and shaming her in front of the whole family. He spoke softly and said he only told the truth, but they still wouldn't believe him. She worries that since the president seems to favor her cousin, she'll lose all respect in the family. He then reminds her of the Fong family's young master and asks all about him. The young woman explains that he can't compare because the other guy isn't even the head of his company and isn't on the same level. Hearing this, the protagonist wonders if he should feel happy or sad about the comparison. Suddenly, she snaps and screams that the other guy is 10,000 times better and that he needs to clean up his mess. Thinking she's being silly, the young man says he's busy and will hang up if that's all she wanted. She grabs him and says to wait, explaining that she called specifically to ask for his help. Our hero, looking serious, asks what his ex-wife wants from him this time. She tells him she doesn't want her cousin and the president to get close, and he asks why. She offers to slip a laxative into her tea or rip her dress to make it easier, and he says he'll help make the plan happen. She calls him arrogant for thinking he can just stop the meeting with the president. Growing fed up, he tells her to believe it or not, hangs up on her, and leaves her furious. Just after 2 in the afternoon, the cousin returns to the Washing group to meet with President Yi. The secretary waves her off to go home, but the young woman is confused because he hasn't come back yet. Then the employee lied, claiming the president found her so beautiful he couldn't focus on anything else. The young woman beams with joy at the compliment and eagerly asks if the president really said she was beautiful. She nods and says that he follows her video page and watches her clips often. She suggests handing the contract to someone else and tells the president he can ask her out anytime he likes. Just as she says goodbye, her cousin hands the secretary a thick pile of cash to say thank you. Clutching the cash, she demands a picture of President Yi from the employee. The secretary politely shakes her head, telling us she's sorry but has no photos of the boss. She whispers that he's handsome and her age, which makes the young woman even more thrilled. Watching the young woman walk away so full of joy, the secretary can't help but wonder how silly and empty-headed she must be. Next, the story moves to Manchin Country Tea, a wild and lively city buzzing with nightlife. There, Lu sits and sips his drink in silence until the tough guy called Brother Melon spots him. The henchman walks up to his boss and tells him he's in big trouble in the city and needs his help. When Master Lu heard the tale, he flew into a rage, smashed a glass over his own head, and shouted that the man was an idiot. Bleeding from the face, the man begged his boss for punishment, admitting he was no good. The boss lit a cigar and declared that times have changed, admitting that fighting no longer solves anything. He explained why he left the city 2 years ago and turned his business toward poorer nations. After the henchman begs to gather 100 men to take revenge on the young man and his brothers, the boss ignores him and gets a call revealing that everything he owns is actually due to a man named Elder Fong. When he called the elder, the henchman was stunned to discover it was his master's legendary boss. He thinks he'll return in a few days, but the elder whispers that he's already in the city, and the man's heart leaps with joy. The henchman jumps at the news and begs his boss to let him meet the great master, but Master Lu scolds him, saying that a useless man like him is far too unworthy to even speak with the elder. So the boss heads to the city to honor the young man and sort things out between them. The thug cheers wildly, finally ready for the revenge he has been dreaming about. Meanwhile, at the Wang home, the ex-wife's uncle noticed that the president seemed really interested in her. He then tells his son that the next day he will meet with the president to close the deal. The cousin grinned slyly and admitted he was already going to take care of that useless guy the next day. The next day, we find ourselves in Yuncheng, looking at the huge and fancy house of the well-known elder Fang. Master Lu walked up to the place and bowed to his old master as a sign of respect. The older man then declared that he has become a big boss and no longer has to bow to anyone. The man tells him that he owes his success to him and then asks why he has suddenly come back. The older man then explains that the old master sent him to help the third young master on his quest. The gang leader is stunned to learn that the young master is in the city and his boss is a powerful global figure. The elder speaks with a heavy heart, warning him that if his men disturb him again, he will suffer a terrible price. Scared stiff by the danger, the man quickly asks what the young master looks like just in case he accidentally insults him. He said nothing, only gesturing for his personal assistant to take care of the situation. Next, the assistant displays a picture of the third young master, and everyone gasps to discover it is Yi Chen. He discovers the young man has been in the city for 3 years and plans to stay for another year or two to finish his mission. When questioned about coming back, he says a man in his group was in trouble, so he rushed over to help. The elder gave the warning again, saying it didn't matter what he did as long as he stayed out of the way. Once everything was taken care of, the older man invited him to play a game of chess to see if he had really gotten better. After waiting 2 hours at washing group, cousin Shaji growls that he's done and heads off to find Yi Chen, just as the hero's own phone starts ringing with a call from his cousin. 5 minutes later, in the reception room, a relative looks around, asking where the president is and what he wants.